أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and Jazakumullah khair for joining us for day 9 of Little Ramadan Reminders. Today I want to talk about courage. As we see Salat al-Jum'ah being prayed all around the world and the khutab of Salat al-Jum'ah being given all across the world, and all the different topics are chosen based on circumstances, this draws our attention to the choices of khutab and the choices of topics that are spoken, whether in Salat al-Jum'ah or outside of Salat al-Jum'ah during the day and during the week. We see Muslims often compromising on what must be said in order to fit into what is required of them. And this tendency to compromise on the topics that must be discussed and the issues that must be raised, whether it's the issues of what is going on in Syria or what is going on in Burma, or the tyranny of Al Saud, or the tyranny of Al Sisi, or the oppressive policies of the West and their foreign policy of killing Muslims. And speaking about these things are often compromised for a number of reasons. Some of them are due to people being afraid of losing funding, or losing favor, or losing their job, or losing something, some sort of interest that exists, or drawing negative attention. These fears have a very strong effect on the daily decision making of how we run our communities. And this is where the topic of courage comes in. This is where we have to look back at the Quran and Sunnah and find our example to follow. Because as is with everything else in life, when we need guidance, we need to turn to Allah Azza wa Jalla and look at the Quran and Sunnah and ask, what are we supposed to do in this situation? How are we supposed to handle it? And Allah Azza wa Jalla gives us the answer. He tells us, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ هَدَى اللَّهُ فَبِهُدَاهُمْ اقْتَدِهْ. They are the ones, who's referring to some people, he says they are the ones that who were guided, and in their example you should follow. And who are they? They're none other than the prophets and the messengers. Allah Azza wa Jalla has told us to follow the example of the prophets and the messengers. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ هَدَى اللَّهُ. They're the ones who Allah guided directly. They're the example that we should be following. And so when we look at the example of the prophets and messengers on how they stood for the truth, when we look at the example of their courage and strength, regardless of what they came across and regardless of what they had to lose, they still stood their ground and they spoke the truth no matter what the consequences were. So let's look at some of the examples that we find in the Quran regarding their example. When we look at the example of Musa alayhi salam, and we look at the task that he had ahead of him and what he had up against him, it really was a monumental task for him to have had to deal with. And until this day we still make the dua that he made, Allahumma shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa ahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. He was scared. He even said to Allah Azza wa Jal, Qala Rabbi inni akhaf. He said, Oh Allah, I am afraid. He said, I'm afraid of how they're going to react. Allah Azza wa Jalla told him to go, اذهب إلى فرعون إنه طغى وقل هل لك إلى أن تزكى. Go to Fir'aun and tell him, you are an oppressor, and are you going to correct your ways? Look at the situation of Musa. First of all, look at the tawakkul of his mother when she placed her son into a lake and into a river and just let him go, trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What kind of tawakkul is this that a woman must have to take her baby and to put him into a river in a land where the tyrant ruler is killing all the boys because he's looking for the boy who's going to come and destroy his authority? And where does that boy end up? He ends up in the lap of Fir'aun and being raised by Fir'aun in the luxuries of the lifestyle of the man who dominates the land. And then Musa is raised with Fir'aun, and then he ends up, after growing up, mistakenly kills somebody and then runs away. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes to him and says, go back and call Fir'aun and tell him to give you his entire army, which is Bani Israel. And despite that, Musa still stood up and spoke the truth. When we look at the example of Hud alayhi salam, when he spoke the truth to his people, and he told them to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to stop worshipping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they told him, if you don't stop saying these things, we're going to attack you, we're going to kill you. And what was his response? فَكِيدُونِي جَمِيعًا. He said to them, go ahead and gather all of what you have of strength and power, unite yourself, don't even give me a moment's notice, come and get me. We look at the example of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and he told his people openly and publicly that what you worship are things that you chisel away with your own two hands. They can't speak and they can't respond, they cannot help you. And then when they came and they continuously attacked him and told him to be silent, he went and destroyed all the idols except for one. And when they came to him, he told them, why don't you go ask the biggest one? He was mocking them, and he spoke the truth. And then they threw him into the fire, and fearlessly, he did not fear anyone but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah Azza wa Jalla saved him. When you look at the example of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, and you look at their example of strength and firmness, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was known as al-Sadiq al-Amin, the trustworthy, the truthful one amongst his people. He was going to lose his reputation. They started attacking him and mocking him and laughing at him. Abu Bakr was well respected within the community, and they started attacking him and they beat him unconscious. Umar al-Khattab was in a position. He used to sit in Dar al-Nadwa. He used to sit amongst the leaders of Quraysh and make decisions with them. And he lost all of that after he said La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. When you look at Hamza bin Abdul Muttalib, one of the most respected and most powerful and most feared men in Quraysh, and he stood up, and to protect the Muslims, he said, I am a Muslim. And so he stood up to say the truth, regardless of what the consequences would be. When you look at all the Sahaba, Sumayya bint al-Khayyat, a woman who was a slave, who she had her life on the line, and she had no strength and no capability. And despite that, she still stood on the truth. And she died for it. She was the first shaheed, and she was the first female shaheed. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told her, Sabran ala Yasir, fa inna maw'idukum al-Jannah. Patience, O al of Yasir, your meeting place is in Jannah, because that's the reward for standing your ground and losing everything. And in our modern time, standing up and speaking the truth is a big task. It's not a small thing. There's a lot to lose. But we have to look at the example of the prophets, and we have to see that change does not come by trying to please the corrupt system, the corrupt status quo, and the corrupt governments and the corrupt rulers. And the biggest and most confusing part about speaking the truth in the West is that Muslims believe that by talking about things that secularism allows, such as the ibadat, the praying and the dua and reading the Quran and wearing Islamic clothing, hijab and so on, growing your beard, eating halal, all these things, by talking about these things, we're doing enough. And then they say, no, politics doesn't belong in the masjid, not realizing secularism teaches us that religion belongs in the system, but it belongs at home, belongs in the masjid, only the ibadat, maybe some marriage and maybe some certain small transactions between individuals, but it does not belong on a societal level. You don't talk about politics, you don't talk about the ahkam of society, and you definitely don't talk about change. And so to speak the truth in this day and age, it takes a lot of courage, and it takes a very firm stand. So stand firm and follow the example of those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to follow, of the prophets and the messengers, and the shuhada and the siddiqeen, the sahaba, and the men of our history who stood up for the truth when it came time to speak the truth. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the strength to have courage, the courage that Islam asks us to have, that Islam requires us to have, to call for all of Islam, not only a portion of it. Jazakumullah khair, and inshallah we will see you tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.